everyone. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you could please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can always follow us there. Every like and share and subscribe can help our channel to be seen by many more Stargate fans. So we really appreciate it. And then we also have all of our socials listed up on the screen right now if you wish to follow us there. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoy. Bye. And to all the Stargate fans out there, we would love to hear from you and chat with you on our show. So if you're interested in doing that, please reach out to us via any of our social media platforms or email.
After a couple of weeks of having a lot of guests, we're now returning to our regularly scheduled activities. I thought it would be interesting because I know you've brought up that you've actually been recently watching SG1 over again with your daughter, and actually watching that even more so than Universe. And I kind of started watching SG1 also over again, like in the context of sort of while I'm working and kind of working through the series again. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a couple things. One, like what it is like to go back to the series after kind of seeing everything, especially since for both of us, there's really no pause. I think I actually started rewatching when I was still kind of in the middle of Atlantis, and I think you started rewatching recently while in the middle of Universe, so there's no pause, whereas it's very different when you rewatch like 10 years later. But then also what it's like to watch with someone who's never seen it before.
Yes.
So maybe like tell me a little bit like how you got Teyla to start watching SG1, and then also a little bit like how your feelings are about seeing it all over again.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so for those that don't know, I have a daughter, Teyla, who's 14, and clearly I named her after Stargate Atlantis character Teyla. And I have been trying to get her to watch Stargate for as long as I can remember, especially probably ever since we started this podcast, especially because I just felt like she would potentially like it. Like I wasn't sure, in all honesty, because like it feels kind of like maybe it's different from the typical things that she watches, but she likes all sorts of different things. And so anyways, yeah, it was just kind of like me and her joke that it's like even if she wants to do something, her stubbornness will kick in if I ask her to do that thing. And then she won't do it regardless. And so like it was kind of this weird moment where she decided on her own out of nowhere that she wanted to try watching Stargate, and like I was like in shock and started doing my happy dance and was like really excited. and then we started watching it, and we've literally been watching it, I want to say almost every day since she asked, like at least like one or sometimes two episodes, at least one, probably almost every day, like every night really. Like sometimes like we'll wait till like it gets quite late and then we'll watch an episode. Maybe it's not every day, but it's often basically. And a lot of times she is the one that will bring up like, hey, do you feel like watching SG1? And so then like we'll like watch it as like we're eating lunch or dinner or whatever. And yeah, so basically it was, I always wanted her to watch it with me, and then she never wanted to because of that, and then we started watching it together, and she has actually really liked it. Clearly, because she's the one that's always asking to continue watching it, or sometimes I'll mention it, but she's like quite happy to. So that makes me really happy.
That's so cool. That's amazing. I mean, does she have like, has she brought up like any particular things she really likes about it, or any favorites? Or
let's see. I think I would have to re-ask her about favorites, but it cracks me up when she has ones that she doesn't like. And one that really actually surprised me, that she's kind of changing around a little bit now, but she got so irritated, like almost jokingly irritated, like by Daniel.
Really? So
she
wasn't a big fan of
stand Daniel. She hated that he always had to fix his glasses. And it drove her mad. And like, it's funny because he eventually doesn't do that, right? Like, he kind of like takes on these mannerisms of, I think, when the other actor played Daniel, basically. And I think when he first started the show, he tried to bring in like the sneezing and the fixing of the glasses and certain mannerisms that were common,
Yeah,
I believe, in the movie.
I think so. Yeah.
And so I think that's why that was there. And eventually, I think that Michael Shanks himself said, like, he, over time, you know, like found what he thought, you know, Daniel Jackson was and brought that to the character, which I think just made it even better. And so it was like little things like that that I think it always just like drove Teyla mad. Like, she was so annoyed with him, like similar things of always having to fix his glasses, sneezing all the time, or like always constantly bringing up like trying to be the peacekeeper in almost a very annoying kind of way, in her opinion, like of
Hmm.
talking about like, well, culturally this and culturally that,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And like, and so like, but she has says now, like, we're on season 2, like about, I think we're about halfway through, and she has says he's less irritating now. So that was always just like really funny to me. um and then it's really interesting to like hear someone's perspectives of like either characters they think are interested in each other and they
Hmm.
think something may or may not happen, like romantically, or even like side characters that maybe I never really thought much about, and like she might really like what was his name, Kowalski or something like that, the
Oh
guy.
yeah, Kowalski. Yeah.
She really liked him.
Oh, then
Uh,
that's sad.
yeah, she really liked him, so she was sad when all of that happened. So it's really like cool to just like be watching it with someone that's never seen it before and also younger. It's really interesting to like hear that perspective. And then for myself, rewatching it so soon after I had seen it, really, in the sense that, you know, I'm on, you know, me and you have watched SG1 and then Atlantis and then are on Universe, and then like I just decided to go back to SG1. Like, I've never rewatched it like that close together before, because like I'd said when we started this podcast, when I watched SG1 for this podcast, I hadn't watched it like since I was like in my early 20s or whatever. And so it was like a long time ago. And so like, um what I find with myself too is like, I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm actually like, because I always joke about not remembering like things, or having to like rewatch things to remember names or remember certain details with stuff. So I feel like I'm remembering it a little bit easier, like, or like there's little things that I might notice that like I didn't notice when watching it before. That helps me kind of like understand like the full details of what's actually going on, like things that I never fully like focused on like the other time through. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's one of my favorite things about rewatching too. But I'm just curious, like, I mean, it's an interesting observation about Daniel,
Hmm.
and specifically when you mentioned that he was always being this sort of cultural peacekeeper,
Hmm.
because I really wonder how that's different. Like, we grew up in the time where actually the whole situation of like ethnocentrism and like American exceptionalism was like really present, I think, because we weren't quite as, I mean, Stargate came out in 1997. So we weren't quite as globally, I think, connected in the same way that everybody is now.
Hmm.
And I think that the show was really trying to dismantle that.
Hmm.
Like, it kind of reminded me of a lot of like, whenever I watch SG1, it reminded me of the parallels like in university at the time, or like college around like late 90s, early 2000s. If you take an anthropology class, they really dig into that a lot. Like, evaluating culture is not based on your own kind of like your own perspective. And I think in SG1, that's kind of like Daniel plays that role a lot too, like not just like to be empathetic and have this moral compass, but also to kind of highlight how ethnocentric people can be.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, like, you know, for people that are maybe more Gen Z or have grown up in the situation where this is not quite the same issue that they're confronted with a lot, they're confronted with other issues, that they could maybe see that as like maybe the same way that like people in older generations look at some media and say, oh, this is so woke, but like for us or something, it seems completely normal. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
it's like kind of a weird thing that if you didn't have that perspective, that it almost like seems annoying, whereas for
Yeah.
us we needed that kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, now we need certain things in the media. So I think like that is very interesting to me, like that
Yeah.
observation, because
Yeah.
so, but the other thing I'm curious about, um, like, were there any things that other things other than Daniel that Teyla said that kind of surprised you in terms of her opinions of?
Um, oh, that's a good question. Probably. I'm trying to think what though. I think sometimes it was just like when there were certain episodes that like I was really excited to have them finally come up that that I really liked, like a certain like group of characters like the Knox or
Mhm.
the guy that always says come try like
Like,
like all of those things. Like I was actually surprised that she wasn't really all that into them,
okay.
like so I guess like part of it isn't so much like something specifically said, but it was more of like the ones that I would get really excited about, she was less excited about. It didn't hit her in the same way.
Hmm.
Not that she didn't like it, but it was just kind of like, you know, just like any other episode in a sense. The things that would surprise me were sometimes like some of her perceptions of who she would think are going to be like romantically linked, because
Hmm.
like um I find that there's certain little things that when you're watching stuff that I guess you could kind of see there being something there,
Hmm.
that either does or doesn't happen, you know, later down the line in the show. And so I guess like I was surprised sometimes that she was so perceptive to certain things, or like how I had mentioned to you, I think when I very first started rewatching Stargate and I hadn't watched it in forever. And I remember saying to you, like, oh, it's really weird to me, like, to think of like Sam and Jack. Like, I'm thinking more of like, I feel like Sam and Daniel actually, like, they
Oh
seem
yeah.
like they would like work better together because like they seem more similar. And like, that's actually something Teyla picked up on. And
That's so
she
interesting.
was just like, oh gosh, they're gonna be together. Like, and I was just like, wait, what? Like you're picking up on that too? Like I thought that was like a weird thing that I was picking up on, because I remember you being like weirded out by it when I mentioned that. But I only noticed that vibe between those two characters like a little bit in season 1 in the very beginning. And then
Hmm.
after that it completely goes away and they're much more like brother and sister. So it's weird. Like I wonder why I was picking up on that and why she was picking up on that. Or she'll
Yeah.
pick up on like other things too. But yeah, I can't think of anything like specific. Um there probably have been things maybe that she's mentioned that surprised me, but I can't, unfortunately I can't think of it right now. Like if it comes to me, I'll let you know. But I mean, how has it been for you? Like, I mean, I know like it was a little further back, more when we first started doing this podcast where, you know, you were watching with your kids as well. Was there anything during those times that you can remember that stood out to you when you were like you were rewatching it, but there was, I believe it was their first time watching it then, right?
I think it was Vala's first, the last time. And it's really funny because I guess we did one time with Odin, one time with Freya, and one time with Vala. Like everybody kind of had their watch through. I think like maybe Owen and Freight was the same, like it was the same time because Owen watched it when he was very little, and I don't really count that, like when he was super little, like 3 or 4. But then later during the pandemic, I remember we rewatched it, but Vala didn't really participate in that one. She was too little for that kind of, so this was kind of her watch. I'm not sure if there was anything I think she really observed that kind of shocked me, but of course she is a little bit younger than Teyla. So I think, you know, when she started, she was like maybe 9 when she started that watch through. So I can't think of like those kinds of things that were specific, but I always find it really interesting to watch with people that are younger because their media is just so different.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I think there's something about Stargate that, especially in the earlier seasons, it's really, I mean, it's something you would consider so slow, probably, from like what they're used to, like this kind of media where everything is going. But it's almost like because they're so saturated with that, it's like a nice respite because there's a lot of character development. There's funny things that happen. There's things you can actually laugh at there, but yet there's like action at the same time. And so I think in that regard, it's actually kind of a show that it really does, you know, work well for kids. What's kind of interesting is sometimes like I found how much sometimes that when there's like issues happening that they're dealing with in other cultures, it'll like parallel an issue, you know, in our world now that maybe was or wasn't there back then, but like now, and then they notice it, that they'll notice, oh, that's something, you know, going on right now or whatever. And so I think sometimes there are those things, or like, you know, conflicts that occurred in the show that, you know, were not existent for like maybe the first time I watched it, but maybe returned when I watched it again. And so in that sense, it's kind of interesting, like seeing people watching this, but through their experiences through a post 2020 kind of world, like post 2016 kind of world, like that it's very different, I think, than say us watching it in like, I don't know, like the sometime between 1997 and 2007 when it was coming out was a very, very different like world. So interesting. It's very interesting.
Another kind of interesting thought too, and this was something that Teyla did bring up. Well, it was kind of about another show, but then I looked into it for Stargate. So like there was a show that Teyla liked that then like she had found out that a different show that had been running for many years was also filmed during those same years, and she was surprised because she felt like that other show seemed more modern than the show that she had watched. And so I looked to see somehow me and Teyla had started talking about the show Friends. And I'm just like, you know, I bet you that was actually filming around the same time as Stargate. And so I looked it up, and Friends was filming actually initially before Stargate started. And Stargate started, I believe, in 97, and Friends was like maybe like 96 or 95 or 94 or something around there. And I was surprised because I was just like, Friends kind of feels so much more modern in a sense from the older Stargate episodes. But then I was thinking back and I'm like, well, it probably feels that way because it's two totally different kinds of shows, where Friends is a sitcom that's filmed in a very, very specific way with very certain like things with the camera and everything. And then you have a sci-fi show that clearly things with special effects and everything else has massively improved now, right? And so I feel like with those types of shows or movies, you see such a massive change because specifically in sci-fi, I think because of like special effects making like such huge improvements. Also, then it's like you have certain things in music that was maybe more common in sci-fi styled shows back then that maybe is taken away now or just done in a slightly different way. So I think that's probably why like certain things within that genre maybe feel so different. But I think what I do find surprising is that young like that younger kids do like the show. Like, I'm not surprised by it, but at the same time I am, if that makes sense, because like I love the show and I want everyone to love Stargate. But then there's that small part of me that just expects, because I love it and, you know, maybe because of my age and whatever, that a younger group of kids aren't going to get the same thing out of it. But like I find it like a pleasant surprise that like it seems like, at least within our own kids, like that they all really like it and they genuinely really like it, you know. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that, because I don't think it's too common that you can find a show or a movie that is technically from so long ago. I mean, basically I was the age that my daughter is now, I think, when Stargate, roughly around the same age when Stargate came out. I mean,
Even younger, yeah.
I never watched it then. Like, I'm kind of, like I was saying, I was actually just saying, like, I'm kind of sad I never watched it when it was first out and I just never knew about it, because I'm really curious what my perception of the show would have been.
Yeah, same. I'm curious too.
Because I
Like,
can't imagine what I would have thought, because it's
mhm.
so far from what I watched at that time. Like at that
Okay.
time, like I was really, I don't know what I was into really. Like, um, I mean,
Well, I
yeah,
know
sorry.
at least and for sure at that time, I definitely dragged you to the 20th anniversary Star Wars movies at the
Yeah,
theater.
yeah. Oh no, I definitely remember that. I definitely remember that.
Whether you
Um,
were into that or not at the time, I don't
I
know.
don't think I was all that into it. Like, I think I liked it. Um, but then it wasn't in the same way that like I like sci-fi now and that I like Stargate and
Yeah.
things like that. I think actually that put in my mind that I thought maybe I didn't like sci-fi.
Oh man, see, like
Because I remember as a young adult, like saying to you and your then partner, when you mentioned Stargate to me, I'm just like, I don't know, I'm not really into sci-fi, which is a crazy comment to me now, because I
yeah.
love sci-fi stuff. And like there's a lot of things that I used to not really be into that I used to say I didn't like. So I
Yeah.
just think like my tastes and things had changed. I think also, what, 97, wasn't that also around the time of like Titanic?
Yes.
um so there was Titanic. I remember seeing that. I mean, I guess one thing that's similar to maybe a sci-fi kind of cheesiness level is maybe like when I was a kid, I watched a lot of Power Rangers and I
Mhm.
loved Power Rangers.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Like loved Power Rangers. I was really into Power Rangers. So yeah, maybe I would have liked it. I don't know. I'm just really curious what I would have thought had I watched Stargate at the age that I was when it came out. So it's just like fascinating to me to think that like here we are watching it still. Many people watch it still and love it. Everyone's like fight that are fans of it are fighting for it to become a
Yeah.
show again, you
Yes.
know. I mean, that's kind of amazing that like people still feel so strongly about something. And then you have a younger generation of people that genuinely truly like it. And so I think that should show the creators and that should show the studios that it would be incredibly successful if you have so many different generations of people that genuinely really love a show that was made quite a long time ago. It's only guaranteed for success if you come out with something, as long as it's done right, you know, not
Mhm.
just like a reboot or whatever, just like a new section of that same show basically. But like yeah, so I don't know.
Well, what's really, really fascinating is that I actually think a lot of, and this is like, because I mean, this is true for both of us, and I think it's true for actually a lot of people, that a lot of people that are Stargate fans did not necessarily watch it when it first came out. And so actually a lot of the interest in Stargate is, unlike a lot of series, is not necessarily coming from nostalgia. You know,
Mhm.
it's coming from people that came to the show later and kind of want more. I
Yeah.
mean, we came to the show rather early, but still late. But there are people I think that came to it even later, like maybe as it got, I think when it was only recently put on some streaming services, then people come to it. And I think so a lot of it is, whereas I think some other shows were out of a place of nostalgia where people kind of wanted it. And I'm sure there's some people where it's nostalgic, but I think for some people, they just genuinely want to see more.
Mhm.
And it's really funny when you brought up Titanic because I think, yeah, you know, like I don't think if I saw Titanic now that I would be like, oh, that's a good movie. I think I would like, there's probably so many things that would bother me. Like just in terms of like how relationships worked in movies from that time. Like, you know, like we
Yeah.
like our generation, like when we saw that, probably thought, oh my God, this is so romantic. I bet you if you showed this to like some Gen Z, they would be like, oh my God, that's so toxic. Right?
Yeah.
Like 100%.
Yeah. I'm trying to actually remember because I did actually watch Titanic with Teyla.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
I can't remember her thoughts on it. She just went on and on about the fact that he could have been on the piece of door or whatever that was at the end when they're in the water. You know, that's like a whole thing that people like constantly bring up. They're like, but it was big enough for him to go on it. Like she
Yeah,
could have
I mean,
saved him.
it really was. They could have just made it smaller so that there wasn't this debate, but I don't know.
I know,
Like,
right? I can't remember like if there was too many things that like stood out to me with that movie in particular that I was just like, oh, but I do know what you mean though. I have watched things where it's like movies that are supposed to be like a good example of like relationships and they're
oh yeah.
horribly toxic and like people just like swooned over like thinking that they were like the best like people ever and I'm just like ew no you're
Yeah.
teaching people bad things.
Oh yeah. Like I think the 90s are pretty notorious for that. And then in the 90s and 2000s, also like I think a lot of comedy is kind of unfortunately very unwatchable, especially from the
Yeah,
early 2000s. It's just like,
I mean one thing that like I thought of recently when doing this rewatch of SG1 that I'm curious to hear your viewpoint on is there was a few episodes. I don't have it in front of me to know the names of the episodes, but I felt like they really like were on the fence of being like somewhat offensive to like certain cultures. Like I don't think that was the intention. But it's like that one episode with Carter where she wears the headdress and everything. I know we've talked about that before. That one seemed a bit iffy. And then more recently I watched one where it was oh shoot, what was it called? It was the episode in I think it's in season 2 of SG1 where there is like these weird alien beings that take form like one takes form as a wolf.
mhm. Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's
I
called
know.
like spirits. I think it was called spirits. And the way they have like the people that were supposed to be potentially at one point initially originated from Native Americans, and then somehow I don't really understand it all are on that other planet, but like their ancestors are basically Native Americans or something like that. I like I felt like the way they portrayed all of them kind of hit me in a weird way. I don't know how to explain it. It just felt like I don't know, someone that was Native American would be kind of offended. um that it just kind of hit me in a weird way. So there's that. And then on top of all of that thought process, the other thing I noticed, and then I was curious to hear your thoughts on that, was that one thing that definitely stands out with SG1 compared to like Universe is that the acting in it, especially with the guest actors, whenever they go on a different planet, is very theatrical. The
Mhm.
acting style is very different. So some of the episodes are a little cringy to me with how the people on the other planets act. Like it works and it's supposed to be that way and there's a reason it's that way, but but it's very like I could imagine that same person acting in that way on stage in
Yeah.
theater, whereas normally with like TV shows and movies it's a little bit of a different style of acting. And so especially that episode with the spirits episode, the main guy that um played like the native Indian person,
Chinani?
yeah, I felt like his acting style just like, and if I remember correctly, like when I saw it the other time too, I kept thinking he was joking. Like I kept thinking like he was messing with them and messing with Carter and like joking. Like he always seemed amused as he was talking. And like it seemed very theatrical is the only way I know how to put it. And then it's also like that with other episodes with other people. It's just done in a very different kind of way, but I feel like the members of SG1 don't act in that way. It's just sometimes when they go to these other planets and meet new people and aliens or whatever, it's just like a different style of acting. So yeah, sorry, I know I babbled a lot of different points there. So
I think part of that is probably because maybe it's based on, I don't know, I haven't really seen a lot of Star Trek, but I've seen little bits and pieces, and sometimes like especially the like other alien planets they visit, sometimes the acting is a little bit like in that more theater vein, and so maybe they're kind of pulling from that in terms of the
mhm.
direction. In terms of the episode, like I'll have to, and I will put a link to this. I'll find it and put a link, but I know that there is this channel that did a very, very long video essay called a Stargate, a retrospective. And as someone who is a Stargate fan that goes through all of Stargate, but also addresses, especially in some of the early episodes, that, there's some things that are just like maybe feel insensitive, or, I mean, a lot of people, the episode you're talking about where they run into basically nomads is emancipation, and that's kind of like an episode that a lot of people have like cite as they don't like it, and it's a very insensitive, culturally inappropriate episode. So I think like when you said that, like you had that thought, like a lot of people kind of already had that thought, and apparently as far as I know, there's a similar episode of Stargate or Star Trek that's kind of received the same criticism, which is also written by the same person, although the person then went later on to write further
Oh,
Stargate episodes that weren't in that realm. So I think it's partially maybe that, and I think like the reason I mentioned the Stargate retrospective is because the person does a really, really good job of kind of discussing those things without, well, remaining a fan of the series, and kind of discussing some of the other things, and how you can kind of remain a fan and watch it and understand some of these,
yeah.
but acknowledge some of these things. It's interesting, the other one you brought up, because I hadn't thought about it, but also I wonder if that's partially because um the they're particularly talking about people from BC, and the show is filmed in BC. So I always kind of thought, oh, okay, they want to finally make a show that's acknowledging the people that are like from this region. So that's all kind of why I always didn't really think much of that one. Especially because they really do that episode kind of does a good job of crapping on the the behavior even of.
Yeah, it does do that. Yeah.
And so I think sometimes like there's always this strange, there's like sometimes a strange line of when is it like an insensitive thing and when is it used as a way to kind of highlight I mean, I don't want to say ignorance or whatever, but the wrong behavior of the group. But I don't know, that one, I have to say, it didn't occur to me just simply because like of that BC connection. And but yeah, no, I think there's sometimes a lot of this in the earlier episodes. It is a little bit kind of like on this format, like Star Trek of Alien of the Week, and sometimes it is a little bit over the top. And I definitely think stuff that probably nowadays we wouldn't do it like that. I don't think you would have an episode like Emancipation now.
Yeah.
Although it's kind of like really unfortunate that that's the only kind of episode where I mean, I guess there's some other one where they do run into a more nomadic culture, but it's kind of like unfortunate that the one kind of really prominent nomadic culture episode is like not, like considered not done very sensitively.
Yeah. Oh, like one thing I just thought of too, it's slightly off topic of that. So let me know if you had more to say before I.
No, go ahead.
Okay. One thing I noticed as going back and rewatching it, and it was also something that Teyla kind of agreed with me on, that we both felt this way. Something that I didn't notice that I didn't like about Teal'c, because I love Teal'c and he's amazing. But one thing I really don't like about his character is that when he is with his own people and with his family, he treats his wife horribly and treats her like she is his property. And he even will say like, woman, listen to me, or like, don't, whatever it is, like speaks to her like she is his property and that's how she's to be treated. But when he is with everyone else, he treats them with empathy. And like, like if he speaks to Jack or Carter or whatever, and they're talking to him about something, he just kind of thoughtfully listens. He may not say much, but he thoughtfully listens and reacts in a very specific way. Whenever he is with his wife, even though it's just those few episodes, it's almost borderline abusive in my opinion. Like the way he talks to her, the way he'll just grab her arm and kind of almost like shake her, get mad at her, or like have like, like when he went back in that one episode and found out that she had basically remarried basically another guy. Granted that is awful, but at the same time, he completely left his family. They didn't know where he was initially. He didn't even tell people he had a family initially. He has a son, and then like he just leaves them and then chooses to stay with SG1 because it's for the greater good of his people. Yet he expects his wife and his kid to not have any hard feelings. Like that does not make sense to me, and it irritates me. And like that's the one thing that I really don't like about his backstory, is like I feel like it contradicts how he is with everyone else. And as soon as he was back there, it's like he acted completely different. Like he was like just like some abusive husband, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think it contradicts his character a little bit. And I think it's just that maybe entered the story later. But I feel like it's kind of the equivalent of Carter's just because my reproductive organs are on the inside kind of thing, where it's like not really like his character, I don't think had a chance to explore that much, but I have a feeling because later on when he's in romantic relationships, he definitely doesn't necessarily have
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and so, I mean, I also think like it's like, yeah, of course, if you like, I mean, if you leave like your wife and kid and disappear and nobody, and obviously they were outcasts, like they had nothing. And for like in the society they were in, she basically remarried so that she would be able to have a better life for her son. So she was literally doing the same thing Teal'c was. She was just choosing something for like
Yeah.
to improve everybody's life. So I actually like, I think in that sense, he probably needs to like chill a little bit because, like
Yeah.
it was giving his son a better life and he made his choice. Well, okay. But I would be really interested, like, had they wrote those scenes in like season 4 or season 5, I wonder if Tilk would have treated his wife that way. Like when they
Yeah.
kind of had more chance to eke out his character and because I think it's out of character for him. I don't think Tilk would really like the character of Tilk. I don't think would treat his wife that way when you really think what is expected.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like it's just weird because it's like if that character were to treat his wife and his son in the way that they have him do that, um I feel like then the rest of everything we see about Teal'c doesn't make sense. And I know that people can, I know like his character has learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
by being part of SG1 and learning their ways, and gradually changes due to that. But at the same time, even when he talks to Braytek, like,
Yes.
he treats Braytek with a lot of respect and speaks in a very certain way. One thing Teyla did mention that I never thought of is she says, why does Teal'c, he's the only one that speaks kind of robotic, and everyone else from that land does not speak in that way?
Oh, really? That's, I mean, because Braytek doesn't, you're right. Like Braytek
Yeah,
speaks
and
just,
his wife doesn't, and then the guy that was with his wife doesn't, and his
yeah.
son doesn't. Like, so it's interesting. Like,
That's an interesting observation. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just like, oh, I never thought about that. Like, I just always thought of it as him, and from where he was from, that was normal. But actually, if you think about it, no one else at such a Jaffa have I
Yeah,
seen speak
true.
in that way.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, sometimes they speak in that kind of like poetic way. Like, like they
Oh,
try,
look, yeah,
they give them this way of speaking that's like old timey. But I
yeah,
think you're right. That is a really interesting observation that he is
yeah,
so robotic. But it,
yeah,
like as till like later on, it's funny because Tilk again, he becomes not like that later on. He is a really multidimensional character. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, no, it's interesting. And I don't know, like maybe the way that he is kind of with his family has to do with their particular culture and how marriage and family is thought of. I don't know what they based it on, like if they used some model, um or if they kind of just took it as more of like what they think of historically. um so I'm not sure. Like I mean, I feel like in that sense, like some aspects I think of Jaffa culture and life weren't really explored in that way. So we
Mm-hmm.
don't know much about it. I mean, I think we know like about the feudalism of the society. We know a little bit about them being enslaved, but I think when you really think about it overall, we don't know much about like their
True.
customs in that sense. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you would think regardless of that, like, it's either one way or the other. It's not that he's going to be completely different,
Yeah,
with
that's true.
females in particular. If he's one way with his wife, and very much so, like, if I were to just seem like that, I would assume that with the Jaffa culture, like, I would assume that that would mean that they think less of the women in their culture, and that the
Yeah.
women are supposed to follow the men and obey the men, and
Yeah.
that's their dynamic. But he never once treats any other female in that way. And like you says, later on when he has like romantic interests, he's never at least I don't think he has treated them in that way.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a toxic trait of his character that only is triggered when he's
Mhm.
around her.
Yes, true, true, true. That is true. No, I hadn't thought about it, but you're
Yeah.
right. It's kind of like a, yeah, interesting thing. Those interesting things that like you notice.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess too, like, um, I mean, I think, one of the things me and you have both said is like, like, because we're both watching Stargate Universe, and we've both mentioned how like lately we haven't felt like watching it. And um it was making me kind of think like with SG1, and also I know it will be the same with Atlantis. I get like really excited. Like, I'm happy to always watch it whenever. Like,
mhm,
it doesn't matter what kind of day I've had. It doesn't matter, you know, what kind of mindset I'm in. I will always feel like watching those like episodes.
same,
And
same.
so I think that's why, like, with me, my daughter now, like, when we're both like, hey, do you like watching SG1? We're just both like, yeah, sure. Like, it's like something about that series of the show is just like really enjoyable, like, all the time. And I feel like
Yes.
that's really what is lacking in Stargate Universe. Not that it's not good, and not that I don't think like the actors and the characters are like really good as well, and interesting. It's just so different, and I think that's what um why there's such a almost a controversy with people either disliking or liking the show. And I really hope that if they come out with more Stargate, that it's really in line with what the fans already enjoy, that it still has like that essence of Stargate that makes it that any age can feel like they want to watch it and enjoy it, and it can be serious and it can be funny and it can be a mixture of both,
Yep.
because I feel like it just doesn't work in that same way with Stargate Universe. I think if the show had started with just Stargate Universe, I don't think it would have been nearly as successful. And that's not to crap on the people that worked so hard like in that version of Stargate,
Yeah.
but that's just how I kind of currently feel about it, because it's such a struggle for me to always feel like watching it. And
Yeah.
I really just want to watch it when I genuinely feel like it, as opposed to like forcing myself to watch it for the sake of watching it. And so I just noticed, like, because I'm doing that, like it's less times that I actually feel like watching it than like with Stargate SG1 or Atlantis.
Yeah. No, this is very true. And like I think you're absolutely right that there's never a moment where I think, oh, I couldn't watch an Atlantis right now, or I couldn't watch an SG1. If I turn
Mm-hmm.
it on, I can watch it. You
Yeah.
know, like even if like, or even have it on, like I put it on a lot of the times, and I'm like, if I'm doing kind of the kind of work where, you know, engraving or something, like putting dynamics on my score, like I don't need to think, I just need to place the stuff, and I have on the Stargate, and I hear some witty comments, and but I really can't foresee doing this kind of thing with Universe. It's like, this is the one problem that I have. I really enjoy it, but it's like a all or nothing. Like I have to be really, really present with it or not at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's different from SG1 or Atlantis, where it doesn't really matter what mood I'm in. I can pop it on and there it is, and I can enjoy it. But with Universe, there really is that I'm either going to enjoy it all the way, I'm going to be okay with it all the way, or I'm not putting it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, I'd be curious, out of people that are Stargate fans, like how many of them have had their kids then now join them and watch the show, and what their kids think about it. So it'd be really cool to like hear people's comments if they want to comment below, to like let us know like what are your experience with watching Stargate with your kids, you know, is there any times you've watched Stargate with your kids, or you're trying to get them to watch it and they don't like it, or do they really like it? Do they have their favorites? Like, are their viewpoints on it different? Because it can be really fascinating, you know, to see how different ages react to it.
Mhm.
And I personally like think that like the age that my daughter's at, I think is like a perfect age to kind of start watching it.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I feel like there's that level of understanding with certain things that I think is just useful to have when you're watching a show like that. Um, but at the same time, like, I mean, your daughter Vala watched it much, much younger and still enjoyed it. So like, yeah, I'm curious, like, how young people are when they start to watch it, you know?
Well, it's also like it brings up kind of, you know, similar, I think last week when we were talking with choreography, right? They were talking about the Goonies or something.
Yeah.
And there was some movie that like, because this is what I think is really interesting about watching, because not even just your kids, but like people that you're like your partner, your friends that maybe just didn't see Stargate yet. It would this experience where like it didn't agent say like he watched the Goonies with Wendy, and
Yep.
then he saw it through her eyes seeing it, and it kind of changed. And I'm really curious, like, did anyone like maybe introduce Stargate to their partner and it kind of changed your view, or you were really surprised how much they liked it, or maybe really surprised how much they didn't like it? I mean, that's also really interesting as well, because I think it's one of those things that, yeah, I mean, I don't think people watch it like necessarily out of nostalgia in the same way that people watch a lot of things out of nostalgia. I think it's usually something else. And, but I do think probably there's some things that maybe to the modern watcher, they might, especially in the first season, they might go, oh, what is this? But I would be interested, like, to
Yeah.
hear people.
Yeah. And I think too, like also with the music of Stargate, one thing I noticed with myself is like, and in that sense, it's kind of nostalgic, even though I never watched it when I was younger, is whenever I hear the theme songs
Mhm.
of SG1 Atlantis or whatever, it's like I'm always just so happy. And like whenever like it plays through in the beginning when you're watching an episode, I never skip through it. Like I always love just listening to it. Like whereas like even if music is really good and like I'm maybe like binge watching a show or something, many times even if I really like a song, I will still like click to skip the intro because usually you get that option on most streaming platforms to like skip that. And I usually will eventually if I'm watching something that I'm constantly watching stuff, but I never do a Stargate. Like I'm always happy
Mhm.
to like hear the music. So I think that's unique too. I mean, I'm curious, like, does like the music also feel different for people? Is it something that like they also just like enjoy listening to, or do they skip through
Yeah, no,
it?
for sure, for sure. It's funny, the music in season one is so different from the rest. Like that is one of the things that always jars me a little bit when I rewatch, because like the season one music is more like film, like actual film cinema score in terms of
Hmm.
the orchestration. I think they actually did use some things directly from the film or repurpose them a little bit. But once you get into season two or three, it's really more TV show sound, and
Hmm.
it has this like a little bit of a lighter quality. Whereas like the
Yeah.
first season, it's kind of very, it's almost like it gives it more of an intense feeling. Maybe that kind of adds a little bit to this sort of feeling of, like you said, theatrical,
Hmm.
because it adds a little bit of like almost over the top theatricalness to the
Yeah.
the episodes too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But I have to say, like every time that, like in situations where I've kind of watched it and then very quickly like started turn on early episodes, it always gives me this like feeling of like you return to when they didn't know anything. And it's kind of like a this, oh my gosh, they're like they have no idea what's gonna hit them. They're like innocent little kids.
Yes, exactly. Because it's like I started to forget
Mm-hmm.
just how much stuff you go through with them
Yeah.
in those 10 seasons of SG1. Like I realized that as I started rewatching it with Teyla because I was just like, wow, like I'm thinking like all these things in my head of like, well, there's still this to happen and this to happen and this to happen. And like she has no clue what's coming up, like, you know.
Right?
Um,
Yeah.
and so it's like, yeah, you're so right, where it's just like it feels very like it's like the infant stage of the
Mm-hmm.
of everything. And like if you think about it, they got get through a lot of stuff within 10 seasons. More so actually, if you think than what you would imagine them getting through. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you actually think of all of the different things that happen, there's a lot that happens that like initially I didn't fully think about because I hadn't been so close to like rewatching it. I was, so yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I will quit babbling.
Yeah, no, it really is. I think they do such a good job of pacing the progression that
Hmm.
you almost don't realize all the technology they have and all the advancements they make, and how actually like it's almost like it's kind of funny when you go back to the beginning and it's like, oh my God, they're like so afraid of Apophis. Like, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Like he's like cartoon character compared to like some of the
Oh my gosh, yeah.
the
Yeah, no,
later ones.
every time he comes on the screen, I'm always just like laughing, like not in like a rude way, but it's just like that character always just amuses me.
Yeah, I can't. I love Goa'uld that are like over the top like this. Like it's like
Yeah.
amazing because they're really like they're like these little things. Like, Ball has this totally different attitude, but these Goa'uld like Supaknor Apophis, that they're all like, high on themselves and really like completely, yeah, like grandiose, and then like
Yeah.
They're dressing all flashy.